Everybody, welcome Out of Character. I'm your host, Defaulty GM, and today is the second episode of Gain Inspiration. Um, so this show is pretty much where I talk about things that it's pretty much an excuse for me to talk about things that I really like from real life, and I explain how that thing gave me inspiration in the hopes that I can give all of you inspiration from that as well. Um, So today's episode, well, before I talk about today's episode, I actually want to apologize for not posting this up yesterday. I had to work and things just got really hectic. I also made a video yesterday and then just deleted it because I didn't like it. So yeah, sorry about that. So today I'm going to be posting up two videos. It'll be the Gain Inspiration that was supposed to be out yesterday and the regular OOC talk that's supposed to be coming out today. Second week of doing it, and I'm already messing it up, but it's okay. So yeah, you just get two videos this week. So moving on. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about a book called The Name of the Wind that's written by Patrick Rufus. This is one of my favorite books of all time. So just, I guess, spoiler, I guess. But yeah, so before I get into it, I just want to let you guys know that this is all just my opinion. So I hope you guys can accept it as such. But let's dive straight in, right? So The Name of the Wind is a book written by Patrick Rufus, and it's a series called The Kingkiller Chronicles. So the story is the true tale of the legendary figure in Rufus's world named Kvothe. And he's called a bunch of things: Kvothe the Bloodless, Kvothe the King Killer, um, and it's pretty much the tale of him as it is told by the legend himself. So the story is difficult to describe because it's not your traditional story. It doesn't follow an overarching plot line, um, with a few exceptions. There are reoccurring plot threads that get tied into the book here and there, but for the most part, the book doesn't follow the traditional fantasy, the world is ending kind of trope. There is no doom that is lingering over the character. There is no doom that is lingering over the world. He is not really the chosen one. He doesn't have he is special as far as characters goes, but he's not the character. Um, he's not the one to save the world. He's not the one to do all this other crazy stuff, or at least not in this book. So the book is part of a series called The Kingkiller Chronicles, and all of the books are one day that he is telling his story. So it's a trilogy. So he only needs 3 days to tell the complete story of his life and his legend. Um, but yeah, that is pretty much the story. Oh, the other thing I did want to point out with this summary is that the book is more about the journey of Kvothe himself. So it starts from him being a little babe all the way to him doing all these other epic cool things. But they're always just the stories are always very personal and very character driven, and they're just it just feels like you're watching this character grow up. It doesn't really feel like you're reading a book, and that's why it's really hard to describe. Um, it's not like Uprooted or other books like that where you could be like, yeah, this book is about this. It is about this thing happening. This book is really just about Kvothe, and his life and journey. It's kind of like an adventure story at its finest. So yeah, with that being said, that's the summary of the book. So I'm actually going to start with the things I didn't really like about the book, because obviously, since this is one of my favorite books, there's just so many things that I do like about this book. So yeah, let's start with those. So the first thing that I really didn't like about this book, is that the beginning kind of drags on. So the beginning lasts for a few chapters, well, longer than a few chapters, but the beginning of the book lasts for a few chapters before he even starts telling the story. So if you start reading this book and you find that the beginning is dragging along, or that, there's a lot of stuff in the beginning that you don't really understand, that they're not really taking the time to explain, so on and so forth. Don't worry about it. Once he starts telling his story, everything picks up. The book just flows so well after that, and even the beginning really does flow well. It's just me personally, and I don't know if other people have this feeling too. If you've read Name of the Wind, please let me know what you thought of the book. Um, but yeah, the beginning was not my favorite part. Like if I had to read the book again, I would skip the beginning of the book, just because I just don't like it. Um, but the ending of the book is also very abrupt. So, like I explained earlier, the book is written as if he were telling his story for 3 days, and the first book, Name of the Wind, is told on the first day. So the ending of the book is very sudden, in my opinion. It doesn't really wrap up anything. It doesn't even wrap up a section of his life. It just kind of stops in the middle of that story thread. Um, so that was kind of annoying. I really don't like when books do that. I like when you feel like each book in the series is a complete story, so it has a very finished ending. Uh, yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to add that I didn't actually write down, but I figured I should point out, is that Rothfuss takes a really, really long time to write his books. So if you really like this, like if I can convince you to read this book, of which I am really trying, uh, just know, and if you've already read the book, you already know this, Rothfuss takes years to write books. So he's already spent like a few years on the third book, and there has been no word on when he's going to finish it. So it could be 2 years out, a year out, 5 years out. We don't know. It'll take a long time for him to finish the series. So only two books of the trilogy are out right now, and it could take a long time. So that could be annoying for you, but it doesn't actually affect the quality of this book. It's just if you wanted to finish the series, it's annoying to know that he takes like a billion years to finish it. But I get it. Perfection takes that long. So now let's get into the amazing stuff. Let's get into the stuff that I really want to talk about, and that's like everything else about the book. So pretty much, I loved everything else about the book, right? Just everything. So the characters in the book, that this book is super super character driven, and probably haven't said this before, but I love character driven storylines. I love it in movies. I love it in TV shows. I just I love it everywhere. So books especially are amazing when they're character focused. So he does an amazing job on focusing specifically on the characters and detailing them out. So you have secondary characters that have so much depth to them. Like you care about them so much. And even the characters that you hate, you kind of begin to develop like an emotional connection with. Like you wouldn't want to see them die. Uh, it's it's an interesting thing because I don't think I've ever read a book where every single character was important, or like he put so much work into each character. You almost feel like they have to be reoccurring characters, even though he's only seen a few of them like once. He's seen several characters one time throughout the entire series and just have never gone back to them. But he put so much character into those individuals. So it's, oh man, I really can't express enough. And the reason that I'm not really giving away anything, or I'm not going into details, is because almost every moment in this book is kind of like a special thing. So if you read any of like the summaries of it, it doesn't explain or talk about any of the other characters directly. And I think the reason for that is because each character is super special, and it's like a discovery thing, or when you learn about this character for the first time, you're like, oh man, that's so cool. So I don't want to spoil that for anybody. But yeah, the first thing, character, so good. If you're a player and you want to learn about how to be a better player or how to make your character more relatable or something like that, read this book. Like just read this book. Oh man, the character is so good. I'm gonna stop saying that though. Let's move on to the storytelling. So the storytelling in this book is crazy. Just so crazy because it goes from like a sequence of events to a sequence of events to a sequence of events, and they all perfectly line up. They all perfectly like just flow together, and he doesn't sacrifice realism for the sake of story, meaning he doesn't give anybody any of these like precious mementos that don't get stolen or taken away simply because it would be cool if he had this thing for the entirety of the story. Things change. The characters walk places. Like he just gives you so much time to absorb the world. Um, and again, the story feels extremely personal. And also because the story is told in Kavoth's own like from Kavoth's perspective, talking to another character, right? He's pretty much telling us, the reader, his story. You get all this interesting dialogue, and he also puts in a lot of these pauses in the story to focus on what's happening in the present at the same time. So you have kind of these two stories that are happening simultaneously. You have the backstory of Kavoth and all the things that he's done and how he's gotten his legendary names and stories and things like that. But then you also have the surface story, which is the present. What's happening right now, and why is he doing the things that he's doing right now in the present? And all of the things that are happening in the world at the moment. And the two of them are obviously converging at some point, but the questions you'll start to develop questions based on what's happening in the present towards what made that happen in the past. Um, so yeah, it's the story is so well paced. It's paced at it. So okay, the story is a really slow story. If you're looking for something very quick, very actiony, get straight to the point, this is obviously not the story for you. It literally starts when he was born and just keeps it going from there at a very, very steady pace. It gives you time to absorb each moment in his life. So it doesn't just speed past the things, or Rufus doesn't just speed past the things that another writer would do. So like he talks about his parents and the times that he was with his parents. He talks about the times that he was with his tutor and so on and so forth, and what happens after this and what happens after that, and the direct steps, not just this happened, then I did all this stuff, and now I'm at this cool moment that we can talk about now. He goes through each of these moments and takes so much care to really show you what Kvoth was feeling and going through at that moment. Um, and those moments are so important because they make you care about Kvoth in a way that like I have never personally cared about another character in any other book. Um, so the pacing is amazing. The language that he uses. If you're a writer, so I know a lot of people are doing the November challenge right now. If you are a writer, I highly suggest that you pick up this book, and maybe you don't have time to read the whole thing, but read like a chapter of it, read two chapters of it, read the prologue to it, and just see the colorful language that he uses. He takes so much time, and like you can see why it takes him years to do this because every small detail is perfected, right? He's like an extremely detailed artist when he's writing this book. And I know this is like a lot of weird ways to describe this, but like, it's really hard to describe if you haven't read the book, right? Because he just his writing, I have never seen writing so beautiful and like all of my life. And I've read a pretty good amount of stuff, but he takes so much time to put in the fine details and the wording of certain things to just make it just right. So everything you read is just perfect. There's almost nothing that I have read in this book. I can't think of a single thing where the writing or the language was a turnoff. Was like, oh, all right, I see what you're trying to do there, so let's just keep it moving. It's just so good. And the other two things I want to talk about the other great stuff in this book is the world building and the lore of this book. So the world building in this book is so good, and the lore in this book is even better. He takes a lot of time to kind of lace the world building and the lore into the story, and in a way where you don't actually know he's like you know that he's doing world building on a meta level, but while you're reading the book, he doesn't lose you in immersion to give you like an exposition on what's happening. He, as Kvoth discovers the world, you discover it with him. And the world is very much a classic fantasy world where it's kind of undiscovered. Um, so he goes through and he does all this stuff, and he laces it with the characters and reveals things as they discover them, so you feel like you're discovering them with him. It's great. So what I would say is, if I said that Uprooted is a book that I wouldn't really recommend but tell you not to stop reading, this would be a book that I completely and utterly recommend. You should read this book. If you're into fantasy novels or adventure novels, or you're trying to learn how to write, or you want to be a writer or a novelist, I highly recommend you read this book. And if you've already picked it up, oh my god, I would encourage you to finish it. If you put it down because maybe the beginning was confusing you, please pick it back up and finish it. It's so, so good. But let's talk about what I personally got out of this book. So there's a lot of things that I got out of this book, obviously, but I'm only going to talk about one of them simply for time. So the thing that I got out of this book was world building, really, how to put lore in it. And the thing that I would say is that he laces the lore and the world building into one another, or into the story. Um, and that is easily that can easily be implemented as a GM or even as a writer, right? But as a GM, what you can do is you can take uh, the things that you want people to know about your story, and instead of giving it to them in like a, well, this is what this is and this is what that is, right? You can take it and tell it through the characters. So as they are discovering things, their players are also discovering things. So, for example, in my world of Sunder, there are 9 towers, and these towers are infinite dungeons that stretch from the depths of the below all the way and pierce the clouds and the skies above, right? They just run the length of the entire world, and they're huge. They're like miles long. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick. Um, but yeah, they're like miles long, and everybody knows that they exist. They're super, super common knowledge. But nobody knows a lot about them. So as the characters would go through it, I could say, well, they're miles long, they're super big, but you can't really map the inside of them because they're always changing and so on and so forth. So instead of that, I could, as soon as they go in, just not have them know that, because why would they know that, and then just have them experience the world changing for itself, and have them discover it for themselves. That happens. Maybe they see on a wall, some ancient map or something like that, and then it's crossed out and replaced with another one, and just let them figure it out for themselves. Let them figure out the lore, and I promise you they will be more invested in it because they are personally figuring it out. If you make the lore, the world building important to them, like their characters and to their story, then they will care about the lore that surrounds it. The more the lore and the world building or the world that you set them in, the more it is removed from them. So the more it's just a cool thing about your world but doesn't really affect them, the less they're going to care about it and the less immersed they're actually going to be when you're explaining it to them. So if you can figure out a way to somehow implement, world building directly uh, into their characters or into your story so that they have to go out and explore and see things and feel things like as they happen. Uh, I think it would really help the immersion and really increase the quality of your game and your book if that's what you're writing. But yeah, so that's it for the video. So this week, I have obviously the other video coming out today, but I also have my game that's coming out on the 5th on Saturday. I'm pretty sure we are running it at 7. So if you're on any of the groups that I'm on, I'm probably going to be putting up an event thread. So if you're interested in joining, please let me know. But yeah, I hope you guys are excited for that. I'm super excited for it. It's the first game that's going to be run inside of my world of Sunder on my channel. So yeah, the other thing I want to know is if you guys have read this book, let me know what you thought. I'm super interested to see what everybody else has said. If you haven't read this book and you have another book that you'd be interested in seeing me review, or maybe you have just something else in general you'd be interested in seeing me review and talk about what I got from it, let me know. But yeah, what are you guys reading right now? What inspiration are you guys getting? Let me know in the comments below, and yeah, let's talk about it later. See you guys.